Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of Anyone's Game, a sports podcast. Happy New Year. Today we're going to do some live updates of the Murray-Djokovic match, playing in the semi-finals of the Australian Open.
That's right, playing for the right to face Nadal in the final.
Predictably.
Yeah, well, predictably enough.
We're going to be looking at all the controversy in football. Harry Redknapp, the two race row matches that are happening in the FA Cup this weekend in round 4 on Radio 4.
Very much topical. No, not on Radio 4 as we thought it was.
And we're going to be looking at the cricket as well. It's quite an exciting test match between Pakistan and England. It's going underway at the moment. And of course, if any double world champion falls out of a competition, they will get a mention. So we're going to be looking at bowling, which has been gripped by drama this week, amongst many others.
That and much more completely relevant sports news to come.
So should we start with a quick look at the Murray match?
Yes.
Murray versus Djokovic.
Yeah, let's see how he's getting on.
The world number 1 against the world number...
Is he 4 still? He must still be 4.
Clinging on.
Because obviously Djokovic is 1, then Nadal, then Federer, then Murray. Some way behind, probably, I imagine.
So we were talking before the match about Murray's new coach. I mean, he's been hired with the specific sort of target of getting Murray like one step further. He's got to the major finals consistently now, but he keeps consistently losing them. Lendl was a man who's in a similar position in the 90s.
That's right, yes, in the 1980s. Lost in the final of a Grand Slam 4 times before he eventually won one. So you can hope that he can relate to Murray's situation, and I think Murray's hoping that he'll, as you said, be able to lift him that one last level from reaching finals and semi-finals consistently, which he's doing, which is great, to actually, overcoming that final hurdle, which is presumably a mental one as much as, if not more than, a physical one. Murray's beaten all of these players before, just doesn't seem to be able to do it in the majors, so let's see how he gets on.
So the aim will be to make Murray psychologically stronger, but it might, as we were saying, I mean, Lendl had a different game compared to Murray. Maybe there'll be some change in tactics as well.
Well, possibly, that could all be part of it. I have to say it's not looking great for Murray so far. He's 3-1 down in the first set, but let's not write him off just yet. Maybe in a few minutes, but let's not jump the gun here.
Yeah, and Nadal through to the final.
Yes,
he's had a good tournament. Anyone else who's shone?
Well, Federer was going very well up until he came up against Nadal in the semi-final. He was looking very strong. Knocked out Juan Martín del Potro, of course. Beat him previously to win the US Open. So he was looking very strong, but of course you can never write off Nadal. Lost the first set, but came back to win it in 4 sets. He did have a nagging knee injury before the tournament. Seems to be a bit of a recurring theme with Nadal, but obviously has shaken that one off and looking very strong.
Yep. So at the moment, as it stands, Djokovic leading 3-1, got the early break in against Murray. We'll come back to that later. Yeah,
Murray's going to have to watch his first serve because it looked a bit shaky in the quarterfinal. I mean, he came through in straight sets against Kai Nishikori, but that was, I think, in large part due to the fact that Nishikori had a 5-set match in the previous round and was obviously struggling to recover. It's a pretty quick turnaround at these majors, and he was obviously feeling the effects of that. So Murray's really going to have to work on his first serve percentage if he's going to stand any chance here. And we will, of course, keep you up to date with that.
Yep. So shall we move on to football? Well, there's lots of talking points at the moment.
Yes, lots of controversy ahead.
Do you want to start on the pitch or off?
Well, it's a tough choice now, isn't it? Let's maybe start with the actual football before we move on to all the issues around it, because we had, of course, the League Cup semi-finals.
Great match this week, yeah. During the midweek.
This week, yeah. We had Crystal Palace Cardiff, which ended up, probably rightly, with Cardiff coming through on penalties. It was a pretty tense game, very, very sort of attritional, I guess you'd say. Cardiff definitely having more chances, but just couldn't quite finish Palace off. Palace going down to 10 men and then went to extra time and still couldn't find the breakthrough, but they got through in the end on penalties. And they will play Liverpool, who drew 2-2 with Man City on the night, but came through 3-2 on aggregate. And of course, the big story here is Craig Bellamy, who's had his fair share of problems off the pitch through the years. I think it's fair to say he's always had a bit of a temper on him, bit of an attitude problem, as some have seen it, including Man City, who he played for a short time. They then quite unceremoniously unloaded him
even though he's arguably
Liverpool.
The best player of the
even
first
though
season when
he was playing well, scoring goals, but I think his kind of off the pitch problems just kind of overshadowed that a bit. So they decided to sort of cut their losses and unload him. Liverpool took him on, and of course he's been in great form for them. Scored against Man City in the semi-final to take them through to the final against Cardiff, of course, the club he grew up supporting and was prepared to drop a division in order to play for previously. So big couple of weeks for Craig Bellamy. But I think it's fair enough that Liverpool are through to the final. They looked the better side for much of the 2 games against Man City. City really struggled in defence without Vincent Kompany and Yaya Toure. Savic never quite looked up to the right standard. He got rather unceremoniously yanked off the pitch at half-time.
Liverpool's first final since 2006. Somewhat of a triumph for them.
It is.
This could be a peak in an otherwise bad season, because they have been bad at times.
They have been poor at times. They've really struggled for goals. And it's quite an interesting debate, actually, about whether Liverpool fans will settle for a League Cup final or even a League Cup win. I mean, you have to say they're probably the favourites against Cardiff.
That far, yeah.
But let's not write off Cardiff. They've been playing some great football in this tournament. But I mean, if you were a Liverpool fan, given the great history that the club has, would you be happy with, say, a League Cup but no Champions League or even no European football? I'm not sure that their fans would.
When you read a lot of the comments of say columnists who are Liverpool fans as well, or Liverpool fans themselves, in their own right, they seem to suggest that the last few years have been a pretty torturous route back to where they were, taken to the brink of insolvency by Hicks and Gillette. But I would tend to disagree. I mean, it's not too long that Rafa was taken into second place in the Premier League. I mean, it's not been that much of a collapse. I mean, insolvency was relative. I mean, there was no permanent danger. It was just a question of resettling the debt. So for a couple of weeks, they were on the edge. And I would say that given the money that Dalglish spent in the summer on buying a lot of expensive players,
a lot of them
young
really
players as well,
necessarily delivered. I mean, you look at Andy Carroll. It's been a really difficult time for him at Liverpool.
Jordan Henderson as well. He's not really come through as much as he was playing well at Sunderland. The League Cup at the very least. If they'll be lucky if they get Champions League football this season as well.
Well, they certainly will. That's true. Well, it'll be an interesting time for them.
Of course, they play Liverpool versus United at the weekend.
One of the big games.
Drama.
One of the big controversies that's been sort of hanging over English football for the last few weeks and months. Of course, the 2 big race rows, the Luis Suarez, Patrice Evra. Suarez, of course, not playing, still suspended, but Evra will play, we've heard. And people on both sides have come out and said, this is a great rivalry between these 2 sort of great English clubs, and it should be about that. It should be about the football. And they've both kind of called for calm from the supporters, and
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Inevitably, there will be some kind of flashpoints, and there will be some incidents, and I think we have to accept that that's going to happen. But I think it's good that the clubs have publicly come out and kind of said, it's about the football, and it should be just about what happens on the pitch. But I think perhaps even more interesting than that is Chelsea QPR, of course, another 4th round FA Cup tie.
Where both players who are involved in that race round will be playing.
Exactly, because of course...
Ferdinand and John Terry.
Yeah, because of course John Terry's case is still ongoing. His court date is coming up now, I think it's beginning of February, so not far away. But of course, while the police case is ongoing, the FA can't act. So he has yet to face any suspension or other action from the Football Association. So he will play, and of course Anton Ferdinand also will play, so it'll be very interesting to see how that one goes. Again, of course, the clubs have called for calm, and I think actually they've taken some steps in case there are any sort of flashpoints in the crowd. I think spectators are going to be given a special number that they can text to report people if there are any kind of issues with racism or just general abuse.
There were accusations of racism, I think last weekend when Chelsea had a match at home.
Yes.
So it's a problem that's not going away in football, and it particularly seems to surround Chelsea at the moment.
Yes, it is kind of casting a bit of a dark cloud. I think there were some issues in one of the League Cup games not so long ago where a player was, I think he was reported to be kind of in tears after a match because of something that was shouted at him on the sidelines.
Versus Oldham, was it the FA Cup round on a Friday night?
Yes, I think you're right. I can't,
he claimed I can't remember his name at the moment.
Yeah, he claimed something had been shouted at him by a fan, and it's one of those things that there's been a lot of efforts to really eliminate racism from the English game. That's very commendable, and it is we shouldn't forget how much better it is than the situation used to be, and still is in some other countries. But it's a sad fact that occasionally it does kind of rear its head, and I think we're just, it's good to see that it's being taken seriously. Although I know there's a lot of controversy around the Suarez case and how it was handled and whether he was a bit of a kind of sacrificial lamb, but let's not get into that right now. The fact is, action has been taken. I think most people are glad that at least, people are trying to take a stand against this problem. And, we'll have to monitor the situation over the weekend, and let's hope that it is, come next week we are talking about the football and nothing else.
Any other cup ties this weekend in the fourth round that take your fancy? I pointed out earlier, Hull versus Crawley Town could be an upset. Yeah,
it could be. I mean, Crawley are really flying in League Two. I think there's some amazing statistic, like their striker Matt Tubbs has scored more goals than anyone else in English football.
It's impressive.
Which is, I think, possibly even European football. Don't quote me on that one, but I think there was some incredible statistic like he'd scored more goals than Messi or Ronaldo or something. So he's they are in great form right now. There's been a lot of investment in the club,
more than most League Two clubs.
More than most League Two clubs can afford, and I think that's earned them a bit of a reputation as kind of big spenders in the league,
especially since their managers they're dallying with tax evasion allegedly.
Well, allegedly, let's make sure we get that in there. But yeah, no, it could be a great game. I mean, Hull themselves are doing pretty well in the Championship. I think they're sitting in the playoff places at the moment. But it should be a really exciting game, hopefully. And of course, as well as the two that we've mentioned, another Premier League tie. It's Bolton against Swansea.
I think that could be a good match. I think Bolton might be liberated with the absence of Gary Cahill from the side, because I don't think he's played that well. As a Chelsea fan, I'm saying this. I don't think he's played that well the last few months. He's been partly responsible for their poor form. I think David Wheater, he came in last weekend and he performed very well into the defence. And they're playing Swansea, who statistics showed that the second best passes in the league, which is very impressive.
It is impressive. I mean, especially for a newly promoted club, we get used to seeing clubs kind of come up from the Championship and play very much, the sort of long ball game and kind of park the bus and try and defend and play for a draw and kind of hang on through games. But Swansea have really stuck to their kind of footballing philosophy. They move the ball very well. They've got good pace down the wings, and they're a really exciting side to watch. So it should be a good one, and it will be interesting to see, as you say, with Bolton, whether they do play a kind of slightly more expansive game, less of the kind of lobbing it up to the front men that we're used to seeing from them. Of course, they did score 3 goals against Liverpool recently in a 3-1 win, which is unusual for them. It's unusual that they would beat Liverpool, but also that they'd score that many
3 goals,
goals in a game.
Yeah.
So could be potentially an exciting match, and hopefully lots of goals. Lots for us to talk about.
Yes. Should we move off the field now to Harry?
Oh, Harry Redknapp.
Harry,
yes.
Actually, I am a wheeler dealer, a Redknapp. He's at Southwark Court at the moment.
Southwark Crown Court, that's right, yes. On this, him and Milan Mandaric. It relates to his time at Portsmouth. He's charged with 2 counts of tax evasion, which he denies, we should add, quickly. This is related to...
If it's true, which it might not be, we haven't heard his side of the story yet, and just the prosecution's case this week, then it's a pretty obvious way to do tax evasion, going to Monaco, taking a bank account out.
And taking out an account, dumping a load of money in it.
It seems very obvious.
It does, yeah. It's
I would have picked Jersey. Closer, easier, less obvious.
Yeah, it's a strange case, this one, because you would think that if you were, a Premier League manager, first of all, you're not badly off. You wouldn't think you'd need to bother
as Harry says, why would he need to fiddle the books to get £30,000?
That's a big part of his defence, is, why would he need to do this? But also, you would think that he could, find advisors that could give him a more subtle way of doing it than basically just opening up fairly obviously you would think fairly obviously not real account, given that it was registered to, what was it, Rosie 47 or something along those lines, and just kind of dumping a load of money in it. So yeah, it's an odd one, this, and the case is ongoing. And Redknapp's come out with some
His line of
slightly
defence
odd
is
lines
wobbly.
in his defence. Things like, I write like a 2-year-old and I'm very disorganised. I think he's trying to say, well, even if I wanted to, I couldn't
Possibly
you know,
achieve such
organise
subterfuge.
something like this.
Yes.
So, as we say, he denies all the charges. The trial is ongoing, and of course we will bring you updates with that as and when we get them.
Bit of a sporting arena, so that Crown Court, isn't it?
It has indeed. I mean, of course, famously you had the spot fixing case there not so long ago with the Pakistan cricketers, which I went to watch for an afternoon. It was
Does
intriguing
Harry
case.
Redknapp versus the HMRC take your fancy this weekend? Or?
Well, I don't know. Could pop along for an afternoon, see what new lines Harry comes out with.
Just
He's
going
always
back
good
to-
for a soundbite,
He
whether
is, he
he's
is.
on the touchline or in the dock, evidently.
I enjoyed the comments on Twitter that he was giving evidence from the window of a BMW 4x4. But just going back to his defence is that he can possibly organise something. I mean, there is I certainly subscribe to a view that Harry Redknapp doesn't really do tactics or strategy when it comes to football matches. He just picks the right squad to face a team, and then the players will perform.
And then
It's more man motivation than...
I guess maybe that's part of what makes him a good manager, is that he doesn't...
It's not obvious what he does.
It's not obvious. Maybe also he doesn't need to kind of go into great detail about tactics, because maybe he's, coached and developed his players in a way that they know the way that he wants them to play, and he picks the players that will go out and do the job that he wants them to do. So it's a kind of different style of management, isn't it? It's an interesting one. And while we're on management, I think it's the club have come out and said that he will select the team and lead the team
playing
against
Watford in the FA Cup this weekend.
Again, another FA Cup fourth round tie, despite being indisposed during the week and not there for training. He will kind of perform his responsibilities as usual, and Spurs are insisting that it won't affect the team. It'd be interesting to see what the outcome is. Watford, of course, in the Championship, not easy opponents by any stretch of the imagination. So
And Spurs have gone off the ball
they
last
have,
2 weeks.
yeah, fairly
2 weeks
dramatically.
ago, everyone was talking about them being real title contenders.
It's amazing how quickly it can change in football, isn't it? As you say, a couple of weeks ago they were going to win the title, and now all of a sudden they might not manage to stay in the top four. You know, I mean, their results haven't helped them. Obviously, I mean, they drew with Wolves, and then obviously lost against Man City. Although they were unlucky there as the last minute penalty. Otherwise, they would have got a point and probably would have been very happy with that.
This could still be the first season in a long, long time that they finish above Arsenal, though.
Yes.
Who aren't performing at all.
Well, I mean, they're the top London club at the moment, which hasn't been the case in quite some time. They may be caught by Chelsea. They're not far. They're not many points ahead, although Chelsea have got their own problems, it has to be said. But yeah, it could well be the first season they finish above Arsenal, although not if Robin van Persie has anything to do with it. He's been quite forthright in telling people not to write Arsenal off just yet.
Did you get a chance to watch maybe some highlights of the Man U Arsenal game last weekend?
I did, yes.
The furore surrounding Oxlade-Chamberlain's substitution.
Yes, I did watch the game, and yes,
Do you think
I thought that was
Van Persie, that this might contribute to Van Persie's decisions over to whether to stay at the club, sign a new contract in the summer?
Well, it's a possibility, isn't it? I think it was a strange decision to take Oxlade-Chamberlain off, because I mean, it's not like he's been playing 90 minutes week in, week out, so it wasn't as if fatigue was likely to be a factor. As far as we're aware, he's not carrying any injuries. And he looked bright for Arsenal. I thought he had a very promising game while he was on the pitch. He's still a very young player, still developing, but I have to say I was surprised and a bit nonplussed by the decision to take him off. I don't think it quite justified the kind of public outburst from Van Persie. I was surprised by that, I have to say. He's a very senior player. You wouldn't expect him to come out and publicly criticise the manager. But I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it will contribute to his decision. Of course, he's yet to sign a new contract with
Plenty
Arsenal.
of suitors potentially in the summer.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it's the first period for a while when he's been injury free, and he's reminded everyone perhaps just what he's capable of when he is fit. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if someone tries to kind of prize him away from Arsenal.
Or alternatively, if one of the Arsenal staff comes up behind him and takes his kneecaps out.
Just to make sure they can
That'd
keep
quash
him.
any transfer rumours pretty quickly. Should we have a quick look at the tennis?
I think we should, yeah. And
definitive now.
Yeah, more bad news, I'm afraid. Murray's lost the first set, 6-3 in 47 minutes. So not going great for Andy Murray
Could be over by the end of anyone's game.
Well, you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Shall we move on to a look at the cricket, maybe?
I think we should, yes. Yeah, second test, of course, underway at the moment in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai. England had a bit of a mid-order wobble, as they've tended to do in these couple of games against Pakistan. I think particularly they struggled against the spinners. Pakistan with some really excellent spin bowlers, but they recovered to finish on 327, largely thanks to an unbeaten 58 from Stuart Broad, who was also, I think, one of England's best bowlers. That's certainly what
Swan and Broad are very comfortable batsmen. They don't do anything stupid, but they're very good at getting runs, accumulating runs.
I think that's been a really big part of England's success, is that they've had
depth in the
batting order. Even if they've had a wobble at the top of the order, of course, Strauss again out for a low score, again out to spin. He went for 11 in this game, and as I said, they had several wickets in quick succession in the middle of the order. But they have got players further down the order who can still bat. People like Graham Swan, Stuart Broad, who, you know, if they get into a bit of momentum, they can get on top of the bowlers and rack up a quick score. And that's, I mean, Stuart Broad's half century came in 52 balls. That's, you know, in Test cricket, that's really impressive stuff.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's great to know that you've got people further down the order who can help you turn an innings around if you are struggling. I think that's really been a huge part of England's success over the past couple of years.
I'm quite glad to see the balance of English cricket has been restored. That they were sort of top of the world in the last 12 months, beating Australia, and now England cricket fans can go back to going, oh, we should be doing better than this. We should be performing. Why aren't we doing it against Pakistan?
Yeah, as you say, the balance of the universe has been restored. I mean, it may not be a bad thing for England to be kind of brought down to earth a bit, and reminded that, you know, no team is unbeatable. And they have struggled, you know, on the subcontinent. They've struggled to beat India when they've played away, and of course they're playing in unfamiliar surroundings in Dubai, and struggling against the spinners on the slower pitches. So it's good experience for the players, and it's good for them to be reminded that it's not, you know, it's not easy to getting to the top, but it's even harder to stay there.
Do we know why they're playing in Abu Dhabi?
I'm not.
It's because of security concerns in Pakistan, or is it some kind of financial?
Pakistan still can't have home matches played there because of what happened to the Sri Lanka team, of course, when they were playing in Pakistan. There was a shooting, or an attempted shooting of some of the Sri Lankan players when they were driving in their team bus through Pakistan. So I think it's still because of security concerns. I don't know exactly why they chose Dubai specifically. I don't know if there's a sort of financial element to it, or whether they just felt it was good to kind of take the game to new areas. But it has been controversial, largely because it's been very poorly attended, this series so far. You know, they've got these amazing stadiums, but they've been nearly empty, and I think that's.
You'd think maybe some expats might go.
You would think, but I mean, maybe they're all watching the golf, which is also going on in Dubai, of course, the Dubai Championship.
Maybe we should do a live from Abu Dhabi.
From Abu Dhabi. Yeah. Do you reckon we could get funding?
I think we probably could.
Subtle hint, anyway. Don't want anyone listening. Very subtle.
So Pakistan were all out. England were all out for 3-2-7, 70 ahead. But now Pakistan into about 16th and
16 without loss. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
I was going to say 16 for nothing now.
That's not how it works. Yeah, very much still in the balance, the second test, but I think it's a relief to see it's a bit more competitive than the first one, at least.
Speaking of competition, Amir Khan's hoping for a rematch. That's really tenuous. He's hoping for a rematch against Lamont Peterson.
Just gloss over it.
It's one of the best stories of January, I think. It's best sporting stories. It's from December originally. The match was on December the 10th.
I'm just very surprised at how long this one's gone on for. You know, people seem to be really kind of dragging their feet, because obviously there was the match itself, which Khan lost on points. It was a very controversial decision at the time. I think a lot of people in the British
titles. Press. So it's a big blow for him.
WBA and IBF titles. I think he's agreed to forfeit the IBF title to Lamont Peterson.
How magnanimous!
I know, how generous of him. What a nice man. But he's very much disputing the loss of his WBA title. It was the saga of the man in the hat, this mysterious man that Khan was tweeting pictures of and saying, why is he talking to the judges? He's handling the scorecards. That shouldn't be happening.
Maybe if I had both hands free, he could have put more of a challenge rather than
Maybe,
clinging onto his mobile phone
maybe he could have done.
and taking snaps.
You never know. But I think eventually it turned out that this guy was in some way related to one of the boxing authorities, but that still...
The wrong boxing authority.
The
still
IBF
shouldn't
as
have been
opposed
there.
to the WBA, but still shouldn't have been speaking to the judges, shouldn't have been handling the scorecards. And so the WBA eventually, it took them a while, came out and agreed to award a rematch for the WBA title again, this is specifically, because obviously there's all these different authorities in boxing and different titles, and it's all, a bit of a labyrinth. But now, of course, Lamont Peterson has appealed against the decision to award a rematch, and he says that, no, the result should stand, and so that appeal is now kind of going through the
Another
process,
set of judges.
another set of, administrative procedures and judicial procedures and all that kind of stuff. And once that's decided, then maybe we can, if it goes against Peterson, then perhaps we can actually get on to setting a date in probably a few months' time, and then eventually we'll get the rematch itself.
Well, he is scheduled to fight another match in May, so could go on till then.
It could well.
When
I
he
mean,
could play Lamont Peterson again.
It really could drag on for quite some time. This
Khan
saga.
claims that the integrity of boxing has been harmed.
I'm not aware that there was very much in the first place, to be honest. Not, meaning to sound derogatory about boxing as a sport in any way. I'm a huge admirer of boxers and the dedication that they have and the skill that it takes to compete at that kind of level. But
sort of backroom deals that go back to arrange the fights.
And, behind the scenes, I mean, there's just been so many of these kind of scandals, and with the scoring, there have been so many controversies around boxing. Obviously, there was the Pacquiao fight recently that many felt he should have lost, and he was awarded the fight on points. And then, of course, going back for British boxing fans, going back to the 90s, there was the huge controversy about the Lennox Lewis world title fight, where it was given as a draw, and then they had the rematch, and of course Lewis eventually won, but many felt that he should have been given the decision originally, and there's a huge outcry about that. So I think it's just, people argue that no, you've got to have people scoring it, you can't have, machines or anything like that because it takes the excitement away, and it's the same argument really as people have been making about technology in
every
football.
other sport.
But there are so many other sports that use it quite happily, and it just removes that element of kind of human error or human influence, ability to be influenced, that can, that generates all of this kind of outcry. So I think that something really has to change because it's just been so long, and there have been so many controversies.
Sort of video technology or some kind of technology in boxing?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know exactly how it would work, but I know that in other sports...
could rig some kind of charge for each of them. Do kind of boxing sock'em robot system where the points accumulate.
A little bit like
on the
Laser
charge
Quest,
that's conveyed, yeah.
Nice. But I know that in other sports there are things like competitors wear sensors. I think it's in Taekwondo, they wear sensors in their socks on their feet, and so it measures the impact of kicks, and that's how the scoring is done. It's done electronically because it's so fast, and boxing is the same, that it's very easy for judges to miss things, and so it's, even if it's just a kind of backup and it's, checked against the judges' scores or something along those lines, just so that kind of element of doubt and the ability to challenge the results and undermine the authority of the judges, just so that's taken out of it a little bit, because it really is damaging boxing, which is a great sport. Anyway, that's my rant over for the day. I apologise for that. But, breathe.
Move on to another sport?
I think we should. I think that would be wise.
Rugby.
Yes.
You've got
rugby.
another gripe about rugby as well. The Heineken Cup.
Well,
poor attendance by English clubs.
It's not a gripe, it's just... I think it's... it's a shame that there is only one English club through to the last 8 of the Heineken Cup. It's Saracens, of course, are through, along with three Irish teams: Munster, Leinster, and Ulster.
Cardiff Blues.
Cardiff Blues.
Edinburgh.
Toulouse, and Clermont. And I think it's just a bit of a sad, not necessarily an indictment of the state of English rugby, but just of the ability of English teams to make it through the group stage in this kind of competition.
Compares badly to previous seasons when...
Well, exactly. I mean, there's always been a really strong English contingent that have gone through to the later stages of the tournament, and that's just not the case this time around, which is a real shame. I mean, part of it is because a lot of the English teams had quite tough groups. I mean, Quins had the opportunity to qualify had they beaten Connacht away, but they lost on the last weekend. I mean, they were in very difficult conditions, but still, given their form in the Premiership, you kind of would have expected them to maybe come through that. But they were in a group with not only, Gloucester, but also Toulouse, so that was always going to be tough. But, I mean, there are some teams like, say, Leicester, who were in a group, yes, with Ulster, who were, a tough opponent, but, also with a couple of teams that you really would have expected them to beat reasonably, not easily, it's never easy, but you would expect them to have a decent chance and to at least give a good account of themselves. And they really didn't do that. They got absolutely hammered by Ulster, which, for a team like Leicester with such a proud history in English but also European rugby, it's
kind of smart.
It's a bit of an embarrassment, really. And, I'm sure they'll come back stronger for it next season, but...
Sort yourselves out, Leicester. That's the message from anyone's game.
Well, it's
Otherwise, we will call for another sacking in rugby union.
We will.
Our appetites are not sated yet.
No. So anyway, the Heineken Cup is a great competition. I've thoroughly enjoyed it this year, and I think it's all the more exciting because you do get the occasional upset, and some of the clubs that you maybe newer to the competition can really go out there and cause bigger teams some problems. And that's all well and good, but it's, I think it's just a shame that there aren't, for English fans, it's a shame there aren't more Premiership teams in the later stages of the competition.
English fans and fans of all the other Six Nations teams will get some international rugby, though. Next weekend's the Six Nations starts.
Yes, of course.
Have a proper look ahead to that next Friday.
Of course.
Just a quick look at the ties now. France, Italy, and Scotland, England. Independence clash there. Maybe independence could be decided by a game of rugby because it takes away all the haggling over what is it a leading question that Alex Salmon's asking. Just a straightforward clash the Titans.
But where would you play the match? That's that is the question.
Millennium Stadium as usual.
In Cardiff, of course. Six Nations on its way next weekend. My favourite tournament of the year, I think. Very, very exciting. It'll be really interesting to see how England go in this one because obviously they've picked... Stuart Lancaster's picked a fairly inexperienced squad, a fairly young squad, 9 uncapped players in it.
I'll bring my set of knives for next week's episode.
Just in case it doesn't go according to plan. But no, I think it's something that he probably needed to do. I mean, that's what he's really been brought in for, is to kind of blood a few new players and give them a chance. Because... In the Harlequin sense, or...? Well... Hopefully not. Fingers crossed. Especially, looking to build towards 2015. The World Cup's coming to England and, we really want to put on a good show on the pitch as well as off it. So I think it is the right call to bring in some new players and see how they go, see how they perform on that stage. But of course it'll be a bit of a baptism of fire for them next week at Murrayfield, where traditionally, firstly, the games are absolutely appalling, often, and secondly... England have a very poor record against Scotland when they play away. So it'll be very interesting to see how, especially some of the newer and younger players, handle that pressure. And of course, France, Italy is a bit of a history there. Of course, Italy famously came through to beat France last year. So it'll be we'll have to see if they can repeat that, or whether, of course, new France coach Philippe Saint-André has taken over from Marc Lièvremont after the World Cup, and see if he can bring a bit of stability and a bit of consistency to the French team that have always been a hugely exciting team to watch and have always had huge potential, but often serial underachievers. Exactly, perennial underachievers, always favourites and never quite seem to live up to it. So we'll have to see what he can do with them this time around. Should we have a quick look back to the tennis before we finish? I think we should. It's still going well for Murray. He's 2-love down in the second set, so it's all going according to plan. He's lulling him into a false sense of security, or perhaps an entirely justified sense of security, who can tell. Oh, one more game we should have mentioned in the rugby. I can't believe we forgot to talk about Ireland-Wales. Also underachievers from the World Cup, but I didn't think either performed particularly well. Well, Wales didn't do too badly. But... They did make it to the semi-finals, which is better than they've, I think they've ever done before. Certainly,
Okay, I withdraw that point.
Certainly, they've never got further than that before. I think it's a fair enough point about Ireland. I mean, they lost to a very, very strong Welsh team in the quarterfinals, and they did beat Australia in the group stages. But I think they didn't quite perform to the level that they would expect of themselves in that quarterfinal. I think they would probably say that. So it's a bit of a replay of that World Cup quarterfinal, and we'll have to see who comes out on top. Sorry to kind of throw that in there. I just felt it was one that we should probably mention, given that it may well be the best quality game of the first weekend of the Six Nations. So there we are. I think that about brings us to the end. Although we have forgotten to mention the bowls.
I thought I did at the start in the headlines. That was going to be it. But I mean, double world champion. The competition is wide open. Apart from the fact it's sort of a narrow lane of bowling, as opposed to the crown, the crown version. So I mean, it's not actually wide open. There's a limit of how far to one side they can bowl. But
there you are. You heard it here first, and probably wish you hadn't. But it's a service we provide here on Anyone's Game.
Public service.
False alarm the first time, but I think that actually probably is the end now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope you join us next week for episode 6.
Yeah.